Good afternoon. Welcome to FGS TV, Season 1, Episode 6, and a great title, exciting panellists with Making IT Storage Brilliantly Simple. Starting off with our guests, we have Chris Bostin, Infrastructure Analyst at Link Asset Services, Tony Stranack, who is a Chief Technologist at HPE, and our very own Jonathan Kaiser, Operations Director. Evening, afternoon, guys.
Hello.
How are we?
Hiya, Barry.
Hello, Barry.
We all kind of like get into the new. Well, it is new, the new normal for me because I've not had kids around me for the last 7 months, and today was pretty strange. Too quiet, and I need to get back into the office ASAP now.
It definitely is a lot quieter because we've been doing plenty of Zooms, haven't we, Barry, over the last 7 months, and there's always a bit of a din going on in the background.
Yeah, with a 5-month-old baby as well, and 8, 9, and 50. Yeah, crazy time, but it's been good. So they're all happy going off to school. What about yourselves, guys? Have you been busy getting used to it? We getting back into the offices anytime soon?
No, there's no talk of me going back to the office even yet. I keep talking about it with the powers that be, but they seem quite happy to run it as working from home at the moment, unless you're sort of genuinely needed to go into the office for any particular reason. They've said no. So
and no major issues, Chris, with anything, just your day-to-day kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's day-to-day seems to be okay. I think I've been in once to the office in the last 6 months because my laptop stopped working, and that was it.
Good old hardware there.
I think there's been stuff in the news about businesses who are saying we're not going forward, and that the previous owners of Link Asset Services, Capita, were in the news because they are they're really considering the future and how people are going to work. That kind of, I think their chief executive came out saying, that this is the future really for us is having people working flexibly, which makes absolute sense. They said they were going to save something like 20 odd million in real estate costs.
Wow.
With what they're planning to do.
Lot of empty office space. Then they're going to have to come up with something new for that.
Well, indeed. Well, I think they're just going to, it's not renewing leases.
Yeah.
So it's probably not a good time to be either underwriting, owning, or dealing with commercial property, I would suggest. But that's kind of how it's going.
And yeah, it's what it is at the moment. So we have to deal with it. But so today we're going to discuss the topic of making IT storage brilliantly simple, which hopefully we've been doing for the last 6, maybe 7 years with Link. Chris, we've been a long time standing.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? Long time.
So and bringing John into it as well. John was there from the beginning as well. So there's a lot of history between, in particularly Chris and John back in the day.
Yeah.
We are actually looking into a refresh for yourselves. So Chris, tell us a bit about the role that you've been doing and why it's come to this point now.
Well, I'm called an infrastructure support person. I generally manage the SANs and the VMware estate and any sort of on-premise hardware. It's been a big push over the last few years to move a lot of applications into Azure, so it has sort of shrunk on premise, but there's still a lot there. Obviously they've cherry picked the good ones they can do easily and left the harder stuff the on premise, and we've got to a situation where we're doing some office moves, and there's a main office that's closing, and we need to move what's left, to be honest, and we don't really want to move some of the older hardware. We want to buy some new kit to make it easier to move or relocate into the new office rather than taking a risk moving some older SANs.
And John, you yourself have been working on this together.
Yeah.
John set up with the Assessment Foundry, and that's been running. John, how is it? Kind of helping you in your quest to supply the next step of refresh.
Yeah, it's really useful. It's a fantastic tool from HPE that we have. Effectively, it collects multiple data points out of the customer's environment, and then it gives us a dashboard and a report that drills down into, in this case, down to the to the virtual guest level, as we're measuring it. We're monitoring some VMware vCenter servers. And I can see what the virtual machine CPU usage is, what the virtual machine memory usage is, and from that I can then size an appropriate solution. The other way round of doing it, which we started in the first, just to kind of give us a really good kind of an initial ballpark, was looking at the number of servers deployed and the amount of storage capacity, the kind of raw numbers at the top. And actually, after the assessment, we're probably going to come out with a much more streamlined solution to go in, and we can take maximum benefit of the number of CPU cores per server has gone up drastically. The amount of memory we can fit into a server has gone up drastically, and I think ultimately we're going to reduce the size both physically and logically of the estate, but still be able to deliver the same level of service. And that's what will give a great TCO to the business, to Link. And it's probably worth saying that some of the infrastructure that Link have got, they've had for a very long time, but it has been incredibly reliable. They were an early adopter of 3PAR, so they were an adopter of 3PAR before HPE adopted 3PAR, which is they've got an E, which an E class, which is still running, and it's quite something. The big platform is a T, ultra reliable system, but they're of their time, and technology does move forward. And now with our NVMe and solid state storage that we can put in them, plus deduplication, it's actually a lot easier, I think, this time round to size than it was when we were doing it with spinning disks. But we, to compound that, we have all these tools available to us. So, we really know exactly what we need to do.
And Tony, bringing you into the fold, how have you found it over the years of your experience within the industry? That people coming to do a refresh, etc., and moving this forward for as smoothly as possible, should we say?
Yeah, well, I was interested to hear what Jonathan was saying there, and using Assessment Foundry, or SAF as some people have known it in the past. And it's actually gathering that kind of data that is exactly the exercise you need to do. Because what you often find is that people sit there and go, I've got 50 terabytes or whatever the amount is, and so to replace that, I'll just get myself another 50 terabytes. Yeah. But they forget that when you deployed, you were probably deploying physical disks, and maybe for performance reasons, you put in more disk capacity than the actual IOPS that were required. So you kind of sized it correctly, but you've given yourself capacity for performance. And so what that means is that, often you won't be actually driving the utilization of the capacity. You might only be using 60% of the space, but 100% of the throughput that those drives will deliver. Now, as you start to think about the new technologies and SSDs and things like that John was talking about, actually you've got more IOPS than you could ever wish to have that you always wanted in the past. And so now you can size much more accurately. So if you're 60%, instead of saying, I need another 100 terabytes, actually maybe it's only another 60 terabytes you need. And then you put on top of that dedupe, compression, all these kind of features that are now commonly available. You're dropping down the physical capacity to maybe 40, 30 kind of terabytes of stuff that you actually need to buy. That obviously has an impact on the cost that you're going to pay for that. But also, you mentioned TCO, because you're taking far less rack space, you're using less power, you're using less cooling. All those kind of things just add and give you a real advantage from that new technology. Does that make sense, Barry?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And what's interesting in the fact of, when do we look at really what's been your experience when businesses start to look at doing a refresh, or I'm guessing everyone's has got their own IT managers, directors, etc., different size of companies. But when do we start to look, or how often are we monitoring what kind of space we're looking at and where we can utilise it? Like you said, rather than just do the easy thing, which is quite good as a salesperson, you just go and buy some more. Well, but how do we kind of make it more longevity? And you know, as a business, FGS have always looked after what's best for the business clients. When I say that, in suggesting how they should be looking after their and monitoring their storage.
I mean, maybe that's maybe I kind of asked Chris a little bit on that one. Is things like capacity planning, Chris?
Yeah.
How have you done that in the past? Because there's some new tools and some new features that might be of interest. But just let me pause and say, how have you done that capacity planning and things like that in the past?
Well, obviously, when we bought these sands years ago, there was a finger in the air guess as to what it will be for in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
And it's mainly been a manual process of monitoring and seeing what's happened. And for us, it's not been an issue. The capacity usage has gone down as we've moved workloads away into Azure, into the cloud. So it's quite interesting what you're saying about we don't need as much capacity as we would. It always used to be the case, didn't it? Of you'd throw in a large number of spindles to get the performance, to get the throughput, and obviously with these newer systems now, you don't need to do that. And as you say, you can get dedupe in there as well. Totally change the traditional idea of throwing in large amounts of disks and the capacity that you need.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So just moving up slightly on for this little journey we're going to have, and see an overview of what's happening with not just Link but other companies in the country and around the world. What's the next step will be? We've got the data. What are we looking at? What kind of products are we looking at, and are we advising down the route for people like not just Link but other people that we our clients, John?
Well, there's all sorts of things going on at the moment, and what we tend to see is the middle ground where it was arrays with 10k, 15k spinning drives and lots of them.
Yeah,
they're kind of dinosaurs now. They're pretty much extinct. So people are either going for very fast SSD or NVMe, so flash-based arrays, using deduplication, using all of that technology, or at the opposite end of the scale, they're buying very, very large capacity archival systems, systems with 14 terabyte nearline drives, so that they can have petabytes of capacity in them. And that's really the kind of two sides of the online storage coin at the moment. It's either going to be really fast and with lots of techniques to maximize the capacity on those systems, but with huge performance, or we're just using ultra large disks for stuff that's pretty cold. It's not being touched that frequently, and they will usually be separate systems. And one might be in NAS. So something that's exciting that HP have got, they've got Cumulo, which is very high performance NAS solution that can scale to huge levels, huge capacities, but it also can deal with multiple file sizes, because that's one of the challenges that NAS systems have always had with performance and everything else. They don't like, they like a nice homogeneous file size. It's all right if if they're all 5 megabyte files and you've got millions of them, the system runs fine. But their platform, which runs on top of a HPE, I think are they Apollo, Tony?
Can be, yeah, generally.
Apollo and those kind of ultra dense solutions. So that kind of addresses the kind of file, the unstructured data stuff, which is typically the large capacity stuff. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got our traditional VMware workloads. We've got our databases, our structured data, and the solutions for those are typically all flash based. And now we're starting to see storage class memory coming in as well, and an NVMe in the systems, which is just giving them the performance in them. When I was doing stuff 10-15 years ago, we were really having to to pay huge attention to the geometry of the system. So the number of spindles that they've got, where the data was placed on them. And I think we were talking about we size for performance on those old systems. In some of these arrays, the HDS families, particularly the XPs and so on, we'd only be using the outer edges of the disks to get the performance out of them. We'd put a 146 gig drive in them and just use the outer edge. But with these flash-based systems, it does take some of the art out of it in a way, because you put 24 NVMEs in a system, well, you're going to saturate the controller, so you don't really have to worry too much about how you size it. Now we're thinking about how do we ensure that the systems are reliable, because if we are consolidating onto what are smaller platforms, we need to make sure that these things are bulletproof. They need to be 100% available. And I think the two families in HPE's range, the Nimble, which is kind of the mid-range system, I would suggest, and Primera, which is the high end. Primera is 100% availability guarantee, and Nimble, I think, is 6 nines.
6 nines, yeah, and that's measured as to what is actually being delivered in the field as well as guaranteed. Yeah,
absolutely, from InfoSight. So
absolutely, yeah.
All of these systems are reporting back onto HPE's InfoSight platform, which I suppose Tony can tell us about in a minute. But this is capturing the data from tens of thousands of systems that are deployed in the field. So when HPE does come out with a claim that it's 6 nines on what is a mid-range system, which 10 years ago would have been lucky to get 2 nines, it's that sort of difference. The data is there to back it up, and the AI goblins are doing their business and making sure everything is running smoothly.
Yeah. But
it takes the burden off of the systems administrators for managing these systems. They were like old steam engines, kind of turning knobs and dials and making sure everything's running in the right way. Now the AI systems will manage that for you, which frees the systems administrators up to do more productive tasks than just maintain the storage.
Exactly, and Chris, there was a slightly leading question when I asked you about your capacity planning and how you did that, because that InfoSight system, which covers both those arrays, this kind of artificial intelligence. Let me collect all the data and then use artificial intelligence to interpret it. It will actually it will do that capacity planning for you nowadays. It will look at the workloads you've got running. It understands changes in time and actually Monday's my peak day and I run, and it will start to do that capacity planning for you and say, do you know what, you need a bit more capacity, or you're going to need a bit more capacity in 3 months' time, giving you enough time to get through those traditional procurement cycles and things along those lines. But so yeah, absolutely, it sustains the availability. It compares. It can go out and look and if it detects, if we detect that someone has loaded a patch to a server that's had an adverse effect with a particular driver or something along those lines, we can then look across our worldwide install base and see if there's any other customers who might have that same problem, and just notify them and say, hang on a second, just before you do the next VMware update or the next Windows update, just check you've got the right level of drivers, just check you've got everything else. So it's not just the reactive support, it's that proactive support, going out and preventing errors before they actually happen. I can't remember what the stats are actually running at the moment, but it's something like we're currently detecting about 86% of issues before they actually become an issue. So something that someone would have had to have taken, an operator would have had to have taken an action against. So it might be something, just as simple as, you need to update a driver or something like that. We can actually prepare all that, warn it, do all that kind of stuff ahead of time. So it's really, as John said, giving back, operators times to be doing the stuff that they want to be doing, not fiddling around with closing tickets and things along those lines.
Yeah.
We fixed it. Yeah, you recognise the trait, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Well, it takes out one of those, one of those the kind of most irritating things, because we help our clients with support cases and stuff with vendors, and it's kind of universal. We know that there's a fault with something. We've diagnosed that there's a fault with something. We roughly know what the fix is, so we launch a support call, and then we have to explain it to level 1. Then we have to explain it to level 2.
Yeah.
And by the time we've wasted 4 hours going through level 1, level 2, then level 3 come back and say, "Oh, absolutely, this is the fix, and that was the fix that we thought we'd have at the beginning." And I said, with InfoSight, it's already recognised that HP have already got the right information, so it gets to the right people within the organisation who can make the fix easier, in a much more timely manner.
It's exactly that. Boxes that are covered by InfoSight, if you happen to talk to someone, you're going straight through to level 3. So it's not that case of, have you done a power on reset of the server? And, you just remove all of that standard help desk stuff. If you do get to the level where you have to do something, again, as John says, you're cutting out those stages. And again, the whole purpose of that is, if you ever get to the point where there is a problem, you're going to be fixing it as quickly as you possibly can. And the fix is right there.
So just a quick question for people who may not know InfoSight, who are watching in or going to listen to this. If you haven't got InfoSight, can you add it to your system? Is it something you can add into it, or is it you only get it when you purchase the storage, etc.?
It comes as part of that, and it's a product that we're not just now. It's not just part of the storage portfolio. Actually, we're rolling it out across the servers and all components of the portfolio. Because think of the power if now you can understand that this server running this operating system, running this application, is talking to this storage array. The amount of data that you've got there, and you can start to work out. Actually, that problem isn't at the storage array; it's up at the server level, because you've got everything linked. But no, InfoSight is part of the support package that we roll out. If you've already got HPE equipment, you can, again, there's a little bit of level checking and things like that. You can retrospectively implement it on it. It doesn't necessarily run on stuff that's a good number of years old. But for the more modern equipment, it's there. And absolutely, you've got a support contract, and InfoSight should be part of that. You should really consider having that turned on and enabled, because it's to your benefit, to have it there.
Yeah, I think so I think if you've got recent ProLiant servers, you can sign up for an InfoSight account and connect those servers to InfoSight, and it will gather the data on the servers. For the best experience, if you've got a 3PAR, a Nimble Array, or a Primera, you can also have those added into the tool, and you can perform with VMware, and I think now with Hyper-V as well. You can have a thing called cross-stack analytics. Exactly. So it is measuring the kind of data end to end. So coming out of the server to the storage, from the storage back to the server. You can add your vCenter server into it, or your SSCM with Microsoft. It's a really powerful tool. Really powerful tool.
I think it's there and it's available to you, and to be totally honest, you can get involved with it as much as you like. If you really like to get into the nitty-gritty, it will expose all that data to you. But if you just want the reassurance that it sat there using its intelligence, using everything else to run your environment, then you can just get the capacity reports out of it and see if there's any longer term stuff. So it's there, and it's for you to use as much as you want to use or feel as though you need to use it.
So as the journey's going, we've recognised that we need a refresh. We're looking at some certain levels of product, etc. We're going to stick with what we know, HPE.
Yeah.
We've run it all off. We understand what we've got to get. Now it's the kind of and this isn't down to Link. This is just in general as well. What are the costs? How are we paying for it? What way we're going to go? What experience have you got in that, John, Tony? You're not the man who signs it off, Chris, but just to have an overview of the people that are watching. We've gone through the journey. We've now got to pay for it.
I think one of the things, Barry, that we are seeing is a shift to people from that kind of traditional capex purchase, Chris, that we were talking about earlier, where you sit there and you go, you know, oh God, I know I need this much today. How much am I going to need in 3 years' time? I stick a finger in the air and I make a guess, and hopefully I've got it right, and everything works. Is we're seeing people move to more of that kind of cloud-based OPEX model, where, you know, actually HPE is responsible for putting the equipment, or HPE and a partners is responsible for putting the equipment on the floor, and actually we'll just bill you for the amount that's consumed. So, you know, we take on the responsibility for right sizing it, make sure it fits your environment, and then as you consume it, you'll get a monthly bill, just like you do with the hyperscalers and public cloud. You get a bill for the amount that you consume, and then that responsibility for the capacity planning and making sure that the upgrades are done in time and everything else, that responsibility is taken from you as well and passed over to us, and we make sure that you've got the buffer, you know, enough buffer capacity for any bursts in workloads on, you know, within the array all the time. But also, as you consume that buffer capacity, if you're growing, that we make sure those upgrades are put in place. So yeah, absolutely, you've got that traditional capex. You can, you know, if you've done your planning, you know what you want. That's a, you know, a lot of businesses are orientated that way and still like to buy that way. But actually, if you're used to public cloud and you have this kind of consumption based approach, then we can apply that to your on-premise. It's kind of like your private cloud approach to on-premises infrastructure.
Yeah,
cool.
And I suppose the kind of point is, HPE has a way for you know, it has a way to acquire its technology that suits pretty much every organization's balance sheet, you know, a way that they wish to buy it. So you can do capex at one extreme, so go and write a big check to HPE for the kit. At the other end of the extreme, you've got the as a service, and then in the middle, you have the ability to take the kit on a lease with HPE FS. So, and it really depends on how you're going to be using the equipment, and how your business you know, how your business buys stuff, you know, how they account for it, how they like to see it on the books, that kind of influences which way you go. But you can have a mixture of it. So if your storage environment is very dynamic, then that might suit going on by dynamic I mean it you know, it's growing exponentially, or it scales up and down. Then you're suited for the as a service model, because you're then paying for what you're using. If your environment is relatively static, so you know, it grows a little bit, but you don't want to invest all the money up front from your capital budget, then you can use the leasing model. Or if you just want to buy the equipment outright and then run it for however many years that you need it, and you know, sweat the asset for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, then you can go with the capex model. You know, and you can mix them and match them, you know, and do whatever you need for your business. But typically, the as a service and the leasing options are really good, because they allow you to get the technology you need today. You know, you don't have to do huge capital sign-offs. You can get that equipment on the floor and get it running, and then pay for it out of an OPEX budget, which is generally a bit more palatable to most FDs. You know,
I think it's lined up where it's going to be a majority decision for what's right for the business. What's right for one business isn't right for another. So it's more of a kind of up there for the powers that be to make those kind of decisions. But the key thing is, I think, of how it's changed dramatically, even since, you know, the last 6 months, 7 months with COVID, without COVID, how it's become so flexible of payments and moving forward like that. So yeah, interesting times. We're almost done here, guys. I just want to say thanks ever so much. The idea was to get across the journey from how making storage brilliantly simple, and we've got a live case at the moment with Link and a few others in the background of our clients, if I'm right, John.
Indeed. Yeah.
It's been great to have you. Any plans for tonight, guys? Is it a virtual pub tonight, or are you trying to get to the real one?
Every night's a virtual pub night, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be at the moment, doesn't it? It's pretty bad. Plans for stepdaughter got to go back to school tomorrow's first day.
Oh, right, okay, first day back. Yeah, okay, good luck with that, Chris, and no doubt we'll speak very soon, moving us forward. Tony, thanks ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
Loving the background there. The marketing team will be really pleased and happy for you.
Corporate
Okay.
John.
Always a pleasure. Always learning with you. Fantastic insight there, and hopefully it came across to the short journey we've made there. Got across to our viewers. Guys, thanks ever so much. All the best, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers.
everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.